So at some point in your guitar learning journey, you're going to have to sit down and learn the dreaded bar chord. Now, I know, they're not easy, they're not fun, but they are very much essential. And I know myself, I put them off for a long time, and I'm sure you've done the same thing, which is why you're watching this video right now. So in this video, I'm going to help you get out of your bar chord problem. I'm going to share with you 4 tips to instantly improve your bar chords. So learning bar chords is always going to come with challenges. It's the thing that kind of takes you to that next level as a guitar player, but once you learn your bar chords, it really opens up the possibilities, because when you don't know how to play bar chords, you're kind of limiting yourself on the things you can learn and the things you can do as a guitar player. Once you know how to play them, that door is now open and you can proceed to that next tier of playing. I'm going to be doing everything in this lesson on an acoustic, but all of the things I talk about here are transferable to electric guitar as well. So before I share my 4 tips for better bar chords with you, I just want to give a big thank you to the guys at Washburn for sponsoring this video today. This is the Washburn Apprentice F5 that I'm going to be using in this video. If you want to check this guitar out, there's a link in the top corner where you can see my full breakdown of this guitar. This is a really great, high quality, but very, very affordable acoustic, and I'm having a lot of fun with this thing. So big thanks to the guys at Washburn for sending this over and supporting the channel by sponsoring this lesson as well. Check out the links down below in the description if you want to find out more about this guitar. But now, we're going to talk about some bar chords. So I'm going to go through 4 steps with you that will help you go from not being able to play a bar chord to being able to play a bar chord. The 4 steps I cover in this video are best learnt and followed in the order that I talk about them in this video, but there's going to be a lot of back and forth as well when you learn different types of bar chords or different notes around the neck. You're going to be jumping back and forth between all these things on your bar chord journey as well. So the first thing that's very, very important for basically being able to place bar chords in the correct places and knowing how to play them is knowing your root notes. So the root note is the note of the chord that gives it its overall key or note-based identity. So the root note is typically the lowest note in the chord. So let's take a G major chord, for example. The lowest note I'm playing is the 3rd fret on the low E string, which is a G note. The same is true if I play a C major chord. The lowest note I'm playing is the 3rd fret on the A string, which is a C note. So this is very important to know when we're doing bar chords, because we need to know where to place our bar chord shapes that we're going to learn in order to make them different variations of different chords. So when you're learning bar chords, the most common places we're going to be doing them are rooted off the low E and the A strings. So while on your guitar journey, it's very important to learn the notes of the fretboard, at this point, the real important thing here is to learn the notes on the E and A strings, because that's where we're going to be placing our bar chord root notes. So as long as we know those 2 strings, we can play any bar chord we want in any position. Now, there are tons of different ways you can break this down. What I would always recommend is learning the notes that are neither the sharp or the flat notes, just the whole notes as it were. So if you're playing on the low E string, the open is an E. The 1st fret is an F, the 3rd fret is a G, the 5th fret is an A, the 7th fret is a B, the 8th fret is a C, the 10th fret is a D, and the 12th fret is an E. Now, even though I haven't talked about any sharp notes there, the reason being we can easily backfill. So let's say we know the 1st fret is an F, and we know the 3rd fret is a G. By process of elimination, the one in the middle has to be an F sharp. So we can backfill that way. So I would recommend learning the notes that are just the main note names, so A through G. But in this case, because we're playing on the low E string, we're starting with an E. So it's E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. The same is going to be true for the A string. So the open string is going to be an A. The 2nd fret is going to be a B. The 3rd fret is going to be a C. The 5th fret is going to be a D. The 7th fret is an E. The 8th fret is an F. The 10th fret is a G. And the 12th fret is an A. And then we can fill in the gaps in exactly the same way. Now, at a couple of different points there, you'll notice I didn't skip over a fret. So there's no fret between E and F, that's just one fret, because there's no E sharp or F flat note, that doesn't exist. And the same is true between B and C. It goes straight from B to C. There's no B sharp or C flat. Those notes do not exist. Now, when it comes to learning those notes, you can either learn them the way that I just recited them there, or you can use reference points. So one thing I always recommend is using a couple of the fret markers as reference points. So for example, the 5th fret on the low E is an A, and the 5th fret on the A string is a D. If you can remember those two notes, you can then start to work out notes around them. Because we know there is an A sharp, that means the note above the A is going to be the A sharp, which means the next marker, which is the 7th fret, is going to be the B note. So we can use the fret markers as little references. So pick a couple of fret markers, learn the notes that go for those, and then we can expand outwards and fill in any gaps as we go. Don't worry about learning all the notes in one hit, because there's a lot of notes to learn. Give yourself a couple of core ones to memorize and learn, and then the rest will fall into place just by backfilling some of the movements. So the second thing I want to show you is the 4 main chords that we're going to be using to form our bar chords later on. And we're going to be using 4 chords that you probably already know by this point. And that is going to be an E major, an E minor, an A major, and an A minor. These 4 shapes are all we need to know to be bar chord players. But what we now need to do is learn how to play those chord shapes without our index finger. So this is a really important part of practicing bar chords for the first time, making sure you're not using your index finger, because we need that for the barring, which is going to come later on. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm just going to take those 4 chord shapes and learn how to play them without the index finger. So for the E major chord, we're going to be doing this. So we're going to be playing the 2nd fret on the A string with our ring finger, the 2nd fret on the D string with our little finger, and the 1st fret on the G with our middle finger. To make that an E minor, you just take the middle finger away. Usually we'd play it with the 2nd and 3rd fingers or the 1st and 2nd fingers. This time we're playing it with the 3rd and 4th fingers. When it comes to an A major, we would typically play it with our first 3 fingers like so. But now we need to learn to play it this way. So it's middle finger on the 2nd of the D, ring finger on the 2nd of the G, little finger on the 2nd of the B. And then the A minor, which we would typically play like this, we're now playing like this. Now the good news with this one is this is the same finger shape as the E major chord. We've just shifted everything to the next string. So instead of playing here for the E major, we're basically dropping it like this. So the 3rd finger is on the 2nd fret of the D string, the little finger is on the 2nd fret of the G, and the middle finger is on the 1st fret of the B. Now this is a step of the process that I would recommend spending quite a bit of time if you're new to bar chords. Make sure you can do all of those chords very comfortably without thinking about it and without using your index finger. So once again, that's going to be E major, E minor, A major, and A minor. All done without the index finger. And now for the 3rd tip, we're going to be talking about that index finger and the act of barring. So barring is when we use our index finger to play across all the strings on a single fret. This is the thing that makes a bar chord a bar chord. Now, when you first start doing this, you're going to have to build up some strength in that index finger, because typically when we play, we're used to playing with our fingertips and fretting notes from the fingertip down. But what we're now doing is we're fretting notes with our entire finger across all the strings. So when you first start this, you'll probably feel like you're really having to put a lot of pressure on the guitar. And for the first couple of days at this, that's fine. You're probably going to have to work that little bit harder because your finger's not going to have that strength. What you don't want to be doing is adding continual pressure long term. So we're going to talk about the amount of pressure you actually need to use as well once your fingers are strong. But there's a little exercise you can do for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a fret anywhere on the guitar. I'm just going to start on the 5th fret, and I'm going to rest my index finger flat along all the strings. Now you want to get as close to the fret wire as possible. You don't want to be too far to the back of the fret like this, because that will actually introduce some possibilities for the notes to buzz. Like that. You want to actually get right up to that fret wire. And the exercise you're going to be doing is basically just pushing down across all 6 strings and playing them one by one. That's going to show you if there's any problems with the bar and also the angle that your finger is at. If your finger has a slight upward curve in the middle, it's going to do this. We're going to get these muted notes in the middle, but we have the fretted notes either side, so then you need to flatten your finger a little bit. And the aim is to get a clean sounding note across all 6 strings. Now your hand position is very important when you're doing this. A lot of guitar players will learn with their thumb quite high on the neck like so. What really helps when you're doing bar chords is to drop your thumb behind the neck. So my thumb and my index finger are almost making a pinching sort of shape around that fret. And what that means is instead of me applying all the pressure from my index finger down, I can actually use my thumb to put some pressure into my index finger as well. So I can actually push the guitar neck into my finger a little bit more, which helps kind of balance that string tension a bit more when I'm working on this barring shape. So drop that thumb down a little bit to get the finger nice and straight. Try not to have your wrist too high. Try and get your wrist down low. So my wrist is now here rather than up here. Drop the wrist and it actually straightens out that finger for you as well. Spend some time just getting used to doing that. And you can do that anywhere on the guitar because these are what are called transposable chords. So you can move this idea all the way around. Now what you will find is if you're trying to do this on the 1st fret, that's going to be a lot harder because where the nut is and the 1st fret, there's actually quite a lot of string tension here. So if you're new to bar chords, try this idea somewhere further up the neck, maybe around the 8th to the 10th fret. The closer we get to the 12th fret, the less tension there is across the string. So anywhere up here, that's actually going to feel a little bit lighter. So when you're starting out, start higher, and then as your fingers increase in strength, work that little bit lower. Now, I mentioned, obviously, you don't want to be putting too much pressure on because that can cause you all kinds of long-term joint issues if you're fretting too hard. To get used to how hard you need to fret, once you've gotten your fingers able to play all 6 notes at once, what you then want to do is this real simple exercise of just rest your finger on the fret you're playing. So you have a muted note like this. What I'm going to do is gradually increase the pressure of the bar until I hear the notes. So that's as hard as I need to press. You'll probably find that once you get to that point, you'll realize you need to actually apply much less pressure than you actually think you do. And now tip number 4, we're going to put all this stuff together and make some bar chords. So there are going to be 4 main bar chord types that we're going to be using in this lesson. 2 of them are 6-string bar chords, which means they have their root note on the low E string of the guitar, and they are combining the finger bar with the E major or the E minor chord shapes. And then we have 2 5-string bar chord shapes, which are rooted on the A string. Those combine the finger bar with the A major and A minor chord shapes. Now the good thing is these are what are called transposable chords. So once you know these shapes, you can move them all around the neck. And this is why the fretboard notes are very important for this. Knowing where the root notes are is super important because that's what allows us to transpose these shapes all around the guitar. So by learning 4 new chord shapes, you're basically unlocking hundreds of new chord possibilities on the instrument. So I'm going to start on the 5th fret for these examples from the A note. So I'm going to start with the 2 6-string variations. So this is my A, that's my root note. So that is also where my finger bar is going to be. So at this point, as you're building your bar chord, you can even actually refer back to the previous step and use that exercise once again just to get the finger going. And then we're going to build the bar chord on top of that. So once that is in place and you're comfortable doing that, we're then going to build an E major chord with the other fingers like so. So this now takes the place of my open string. So when I would typically play an E major chord here, the bar is now my open string. So everything now is getting built on top of that as if that's the open. So this now is technically my first fret. This is now technically my second fret if we're thinking of it in that way. So I'm going to build that E major chord shape once again. And when I play all 6 strings, I have an A major bar chord. Now that thumb technique we talked about earlier is very important with bar chords, because if my thumb is too high, this is going to happen. Because there's no space under my fingers here for the strings underneath it to ring. So by dropping the thumb, what I'm actually doing is bringing the wrist away, which actually creates more of a curvature of the fingers over the strings. Because this finger, the index finger, is barring the 5th fret of the B and E strings, which are actually ringing underneath my hand. So I actually need to make sure these 3 fingers are curved over the B and E strings to allow them to ring clearly as well. When you're working on bar chords, I would always recommend picking the notes one by one just to check for any issues. That's going to show me if there's any problem anywhere in the chord. So for example, if my little finger doesn't have enough clearance over the strings, let me just lower that a little bit, this is going to happen. That finger is now resting on those higher strings, preventing them from ringing. So I know I need to bring that finger round to get those notes to ring again. So that is my 6-string major bar chord. Now, like I said, I did that from the 5th fret, which makes it an A major. But if you know the notes of the fretboard, you could transpose that. So if I take that down to the 3rd fret, knowing that that's a G, that's now a G major. Or the 1st fret, which is an F, makes it an F major. So it's a movable shape that I can move anywhere on the guitar. Now, once you know how to play that, you can then easily transfer that to know a 6-string minor bar chord, which is based off an E minor chord shape, because all we're doing is removing this finger, the middle finger, take that away. We now have our bar, which is our open string, and our E minor chord shape that we played earlier with the 3rd and little fingers, like so. This now makes it an A minor bar chord. Same rules apply. I could move that to G for a G minor, or up to C for a C minor. It's a movable shape that can be taken anywhere on the instrument. Now we're going to talk about the 5-string bar chords, and this is actually where things get a little bit trickier. I'm actually going to start with the minor bar chord this time because that one's slightly easier. My root note now is still going to be the 5th fret, but this time the 5th fret of the A string, which is the D note. So what we're going to end up with here is a D major and a D minor bar chord. Once again, these are transposable anywhere on the guitar. So first of all, our finger bar is going to be across the 5th fret once again. You can, if you want, continue to bar across all 6 strings, but you don't have to. You can just drop the bar down to start from the A string. I would always recommend using the tip of the index finger to rest on the underside of the low E, just to mute it. So when you're strumming the strings, you don't really get the ringing E. If you have your finger slightly lower, this happens. You get that open E string ringing in there, which is not always the most pleasant thing. So use the tip of the index finger just to rest on that and mute it. And it just prevents that open low E from ringing and overpowering your chord. Now, once I'm in this position, I'm now going to build my A minor chord shape to make a D minor bar chord. So that's this shape from earlier on. But we're once again viewing the 5th fret now as our open string where our bar is. So I'm building an A minor chord shape around that like so. And then the same checks apply. So I'm going to play the chord one note at a time. I'm listening there for any problems with the finger angles. If I've got, for instance, my little finger is once again not arched over, I'm going to have that problem. So bringing that finger over, so the index finger is flat and the other 3 fingers arch over. and that gives me my minor bar chord rooted off the A string. Now, like I said, 5th fret is D, so that makes it a D minor. But once again, if you know the notes of the fretboard, I could take that down to the C note on the 3rd fret, which makes it a C minor, or up to the 8th fret, which is an F, which makes it an F minor. Once again, very much a transposable shape. Now, the final one I'm going to talk about, and this is actually where the difficulty lies with bar chords, is the major bar chord rooted off the 5th fret. And the reason this is difficult is because this is quite an awkward finger shape to do. So I'm going to show you the proper way to do this, and then I'm going to show you a little shortcut you can use if you're struggling with the proper way. So it's the same principle, but we're now building an A major chord. So I'm once again going to be barring across the 5th fret, which makes it a D major. But now I need to build this A major chord shape up above the bar. Now you can see just from me moving my hand into position, this is quite an awkward shape. So what you want to do, or what I would always recommend, is start with these fingers, get these ones in place, and then reach backwards for the bar. You may need to drop your whole arm slightly. You may need to push your wrist forward just to get the additional stretch to get that index finger in place. Now this is quite an awkward chord shape. So you're barring with these 3 fingers playing an A major chord shape. This is probably the hardest one of the bar chord shapes you're actually going to come up against, because it does require a little bit of additional dexterity. Now this is once again transposable, so obviously I can take it down to a C major, or up to an F major, and it'll work the same way as the others, but like I said, that's quite a hard shape. And a lot of people, especially newer players, will find that a very difficult shape to get started with. So what I'm going to show you is a really easy way to get around this. So what we can do, and this is still technically the major bar chord, but we're going to actually lose a note here. We're going to lose the high E note, because what I'm going to do is, instead of playing this and adding the bar, I'm going to substitute this for a single finger. Now this could be your ring finger or your little finger. But what you're going to be doing is barring across the D, G, and B strings to get those 3 notes with a single finger, and then using the index finger to come back for the root. You can also do it with the little finger, as I mentioned. So you do lose that high E note there, but that is a great way to start off with those bar chords, and then as your fingers stretch out and toughen up and become stronger and more dexterous, you can then revisit actually playing that with the A major chord shape. But that probably is the most difficult bar chord that you're going to come across. So if you need to use the shortcut around that, that's completely fine. That will get you going at least with bar chords. And by knowing those 4 shapes, you've now opened up a huge array of new songs and possibilities with what you can do with your guitar. So there you go, there are my 4 tips to improve your bar chords right away. Let me know down below in the comments how you guys got on with learning these tips and what bar chord troubles you've experienced on your learning journey. As I said, I've done this on an acoustic, but all of these skills are transferable to electric as well if you wish. Big thanks to Washburn once again for sponsoring the video and sending me this really cool Apprentice F5 to check out. There's a video linked down below and in the top corner of this video where you can check out more about this really cool guitar as well. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Thanks so much for watching.